Hey everyone, good afternoon. I'm Nick Valencia, host of Nick Valencia Live, and welcome to another episode here of our show. It's Thursday, December 16th, and it's just after 3 o'clock Eastern in Atlanta, and we've got a big show for you here. One, to educate and empower you. The Trump immigration forces and the deportation forces continue to spread across the country, and we thought we'd take today as an opportunity to help educate you and how you could protect yourself against these aggressive, untrained, underqualified agents that we see cast all across the country. From Los Angeles to Chicago, Charlotte, New Orleans, and beyond, we are seeing terrible videos of their brutality increasing on the streets of America. This lawlessness that we're seeing with our own eyes, and they're telling us that it is not against the law, even if it is against their policy. And we're seeing this uptick in enforcement in these sensitive areas, places that in the past you would assume would be left off guard, that it would be just sort of a no-brainer to not mess with kids while at their parents' kids' soccer games. But we start today in Scottsdale, Arizona, where over the weekend, the MLS had a youth official soccer tournament. It's their developmental program that feeds into the league. And according to video that we saw that went viral on TikTok, posted by a man named Manuel Tinajera, he showed this video that we want to show you of suspected federal agents outside of this tournament picking up parents, loved ones, family members, anyone, according to eyewitnesses, was subject to this targeted enforcement operation. Take a look.
Yeah. You guys are fucking cowards.
You see their parents around. Imagine just being a kid on the pitch, and you come off the pitch and your dad is gone, or your mom is gone, or your family friend is gone. That's the scenario that we understand happened and went down in Scottsdale, Arizona. In fact, one of you reached out to me after I posted that clip that's taking off on our social media and said that you were there, but didn't give any follow-up details as to what you witnessed. So if you are wanting to follow up, if any of you witnessed what happened out there, please reach out to us. We have reached out to the MLS as well as MLS Next. That's that program that I was talking about. And they still haven't gotten back to us. And of course, you know, there is this big headline here of the emotion. How could you imagine a kid coming off the pitch and seeing their parent, their loved one gone? But it's also a financial interest as well. I don't have to tell you guys that the World Cup is on its way here to North America. The Olympics are on their way here. And there's no doubt countries upon countries all over the world that are looking and watching to see what happens here. There were rumblings of ICE being outside the club of the World Cup club match earlier this summer. There was never video that emerged from that incident or those incidents, but the rumors were enough to scare people from showing up in attendance. And there is without question going to be an impact in 2026. Countries like Iran are looking at this. Countries that can't even show up here to play on American soil, their matches are having to be scheduled in places like Canada or Mexico because of the travel ban and enforcement happening here in this country. What other countries are going to be subjected to this terror that we're seeing on the streets? Their fans, you know, that's clearly something that is being looked at and looked at very, very closely as we're seeing this uptick in enforcement happening, this racial profiling on the streets. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, the profiling happening of the indigenous community, indigenous Americans, the natives born in this country. And we have seen countless clips on the internet that have gone viral, heard stories like that of Elaine Miles, the Northern Exposure actress who had her tribal ID, and the federal agent who took her into custody momentarily didn't believe that it was a real ID. We also have clips like this from earlier this summer.
We're first ones.
We're Native American. We're the first ones.
Oh, perfect. Perfect, huh? What are you? What are you? Are you an American citizen? No, you're not. You're not a firstborn. You're not from this land. And neither are you. Not from this fucking land. Got you on live.
Have a good day.
Go to the border
And your skin is brown as ours, fucker. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking three of you fuckers. Fucking my son died and this is what you do?
The racial profiling continues on the streets of America. We had planned to talk to the vice president of the Indigenous Journalists Association, Angel Ellis. She was the star also of a documentary in 2023 called Bad Press, which focused on the Muskogee Nation. We hope to have Angel join us a little later in the show here, but she hasn't shown up in the waiting room. But somebody who was our second guest, somebody who was supposed to be on the back half of the show. We're grateful that he showed up early. We're going to pivot here. We'll start with Pedro Chavez. Pedro Chavez has used his platform, which is growing rapidly, to help educate and empower members of the Latino community, members of the undocumented community, to know what their rights are if they're confronted by these immigration forces, these DHS immigration forces that we're seeing in so many countless cities across America. Pedro Chavez, thank you so much for joining us now on Nick Valencia Live and for being early here. We're going to start with you.
Oh, thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me. And thank you for also using your platform to getting the word out on what is happening right now in the United States. I really appreciate your work.
Oh, man, let's start there, man. I really appreciate you and what you're doing. What made you dive into this work?
So, I mean, honestly, like a few months ago, maybe like 6 months ago, I started to be frustrated with communicating just these very simple issues, not just with my people that I know, but even with my own clients. And I really wanted to create a video to kind of explain just the importance of having a signed G28, why it's important, why it can lead to weeks of detention while we wait for a simple signature. And that one video that I made on TikTok, maybe like 6-8 months ago, went viral. And it just kind of motivated me. It's like, okay, this is really important information that I'm not seeing other immigration lawyers reporting on, that is actionable, that is easy to follow, and has huge, huge results. Because it's like, if you have this signed, it could lead to faster representation in court. So I just started to do that. And I started to maybe produce videos over time that I thought would be useful, educational, and more than anything, actionable, that they actually do something with it.
And I wanted to show our audience an example of one of the clips that you post. You talked about birthright citizenship. I'm not sure which clip Eric has, but we wanted to show an example of some of your work.
Do if you're a landscape worker and ICE or CBP approach you. Now, realize I have to teach you two basic things before we go into a strategy, just because it's very important that you understand these principles. The first is, because of your skin color and because you are working in landscape work, ICE or CBP can approach you and ask you questions. That is legally allowed under a Supreme Court case called Perdomo v. Nome. They can talk to you for that reason alone. It's racial profiling, it's wrong, but it is legal.
So these are Kavanaugh stops, and you went on to talk about the Perdomo v. Nome case. I'd love for you to tell us what that is and why this makes it so much more dangerous of an environment out there if you have brown skin.
So the Perdomo case started with a man named Pedro Perdomo, has the same name as me. But he's here in California. He was basically picked up because of racial profiling. He was brown. He sued, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court basically said, no, in order for ICE to do their job, or CBP, there is a certain level of racial profiling that has to happen. And that was, I think, one of the most disappointing decisions of the Supreme Court. I think, honestly, it'll be go down in history on the same level of Korematsu, if you're familiar with it, which I'm sure you are. But it just means, in essence, that after that decision, my rights as an American citizen are diminished, even if it's a little bit. I mean, I've spoken with colleagues, I've spoken with family and friends who are more on the conservative side, and they don't see this as a big issue, but I do, because it means that as of that decision, my rights are slightly smaller than everyone else's. Here in the United States, I thought that we were all the same, and it was heartbreaking to hear that decision, and now to see it applied just all over the United States. It's very disappointing to see racial profiling legalized.
And for those who need a refresher, the Korematsu decision was that made internment camps possible and was such an ugly part of the history of American history, led to remittances for the Japanese Americans who were held in those facilities. And it's starting to really show flashes of that right now in this country, Pedro. You know, what do you look at when you see out there on the streets?
Honestly, I see a lot of people afraid. I see people afraid to get out of their house. A lot of people are doing sanctuary in place. They're basically turned their houses into little embassies, basically. As long as you stay in there, ICE cannot go in without a judicial warrant, and they know this. And in order to stay here with their family, there's people that are just not leaving their house.
I know some of them, you know, I know some of them who, one woman particularly, whose daughters haven't let her leave in, I guess now 6 months. They go out, they get her groceries, they make her stay inside. And that's the environment people are in. It's really important for me to ask you what people can do to protect themselves. We cut that video short that we showed, but what are some of the top things that people should know if they are approached by ICE or one of these DHS agencies?
So at a minimum, get an attorney consultation. They're not expensive. They're maybe $100, or sometimes they're free. I do them free at Catholic Charities on Tuesday. So if you can't even afford one, come on Tuesdays at Ventura. But I'm saying, like, get an attorney consultation. Every case is going to be distinct. The video that you played was specifically for landscape workers, people during a roving patrol, like that specific scenario. But everybody has legal options that they either might not be aware of, or they did a consultation 2 or 3 years ago, and they don't realize that the law has changed to the point where maybe they qualify for something now, like cancellation of removal or something. So keep up to date with the information, get legal consultations on a yearly basis to see if the law has changed in your case, and develop a strategy specific to you with your family, with your friends. You will have an independent strategy that you need to implement.
In that video, you talked about the top 4 reasons that ICE takes you into custody. What are those top 4 reasons?
So 4 reasons, I mean, there's multiple reasons, but mainly it's if you have a removal order, they're going to take you into custody. If there's like a criminal history, if they have decided to do a roving patrol, and this is more for CBP, if you meet the racial components of Perdomo Vino, meaning you're brown, you're in some kind of a worker's uniform, and you're caught in a Home Depot, you're basically a triple threat for Hollywood people, but it's like in reverse. And they will come up to you and they will talk to you for that reason. Your best defense, in regardless of whatever scenario is silence. And silence is your best defense because the government has to prove that you are an alien. They have to prove that you're undocumented. And if you don't give them that evidence, then there's no way for them to deport you. The burden is on them legally. And so silence, complete silence, not even invoking a Fifth Amendment right, which applies to criminal matters, not civil immigration enforcement, which is a common misunderstanding. But complete silence means there is no evidence to deport you.
God, it's such a simple piece of advice, but I guess in the moment, people freak out, right?
Oh,
you know,
hard.
we have a viral clip that we want to show you and we want to break it down. This is a clip from Louisiana of a construction worker on the roof. And sorry, it's actually from Willasco, Texas. This is a clip from Willasco, Texas, where there's a construction worker on the roof and he's approached by the feds. And I want to show you this interaction and then we'll talk about it on the back half.
Arriba.
No.
¿Por qué estaba escondido?
No, pues yo no estaba ahí.
¿Por qué estaba? Yo lo miré.
No.
Está mintiendo.
No.
Estaba escondido con aquel chavo.
Me van a subir, irá.
¿Por qué?
¿Puede darme su nombre,
¿Por qué,
por
señor?
favor?
¿Por qué estaba escondido?
Please.
Nomás saque la mano.
No, no tengo nada.
¿Por qué estaba escondido arriba entonces?
Para que no vea
¿Por qué estaba escondido?
estamos trabajando. No tengo armas
¿Por qué
ni
estaba
nada.
escondido, señor?
No, sir.
¿Es ciudadano de Estados Unidos?
No puedo contestarle, sir.
No, él tampoco es residente.
No puedo contestarle, sir.
Tampoco.
No puedo
¿Por qué
contestarle
estaba
usted
escondido?
preguntas.
Entonces, ¿por qué estaba
¿Puede
escondido
darme
arriba?
usted su nombre, sir? Por favor, please. ¿Puede darme su nombre?
He
No.
just kind of like we're hiding up in there.
¿Qué es el nombre de usted?
Mi nombre, Francisco.
¿Francisco qué?
Francisco Hernández. ¿Y usted,
Fecha de
sir?
nacimiento?
¿Y su?
¿Fecha de nacimiento?
Ya no puedo darle más información, sir.
Is this what needs to be done by the undocumented immigrant to stay safe?
No. So there's a lot of things. So I created a video specifically for day laborers, that specific video. And I would say, one, he's speaking, and that's the first error. ICE does this daily. ICE is trained in this. You are not. I am not. If I was in his situation, I wouldn't dare speak with them at all.
Not even give them the name, nothing.
Not even give them their name. No, because they are on a fishing expedition in that video. They are trying to engage you in conversation. They'll come up to you very politely. So because psychologically, once you start speaking, you're more likely to continue speaking. And eventually they will get the information they want, which is, where were you born? That's what they're fishing for. Where were you born? If you say another country, it's over. If you say, what is your status? And you admit not to be in status, then it's over. Every ICE official has to fill out an I-213. They have to explain in that document why they arrested you. And 90% of them, it's because they admitted that they're outside of status. So in order to avoid that, you have to just not talk, because honestly, I've never read an I-213, and you can't have an I-213 says, we arrested this day laborer because they didn't speak. That statement has never been in an I-213. So what I would advise him is, what I advise in my video is, the moment that you saw ICE, even if it was miles away, your job ended. You descend from that building, and you just wait there, not moving, because if you start running, then they'll say you ran, and that'll go into the I-213. But you just stay put, and you don't speak, and you wait for 2 hours until they leave because they got a phone call, and at which point you can get back to work or go back to your family.
One of the things that we saw very early on, especially when the ICE siege of Los Angeles happened, it was the targeting of working class brown skinned people. You know, if you were brown skin y chaparrito and looked like you had work clothes on, right?
Mhm.
Like they would go after you. What are you supposed to do in that situation? Literally, it's just the advice is don't speak, don't say anything.
So, I mean, it depends on your situation. If you are a U.S. citizen, then you are free to say U.S. citizen in order to exit the encounter. There's some people that don't want to do that. They want to be activists and maybe deny their citizenship in order to hold ICE on, basically to keep them busy with you as opposed to anyone else. But I would say, if you have a family to get back to, if you have a kid that you have to wait to pick up, and you are a U.S. citizen or you are a legal permanent resident, then admit it. Just say, and another thing is, as a legal resident, you have to present your green card when asked. These are certain requirements for people that are here in lawful status. But absent that, or if you just want to exit the encounter, like, I'm a U.S. citizen, I'm a legal permanent resident, here's my document, get out of the encounter. But if you want to, exhibit your full rights, stay silent, completely silent. It will engage them there the longest. It doesn't provide any evidence for them to use to show your deportability.
You know, we hear this all the time, that they're just going after the hardened criminals, or that they're going after the criminals. And we see people who have been in this country for years moving in good faith, raising high school graduates, college graduates. I mean, this is clearly an issue that's not going away. It's only ticking up. And now we're seeing DHS say, yes, everyone here who crossed illegally or is here unauthorized is a criminal in our eyes, even though it's a civil offense. So, how much worse do you expect it to get? And what other advice can you give people to protect themselves moving forward as these aggressive tactics tick up?
Honestly, based on what you just said, like, I wish they were criminals. This is what I tell everybody. Because if they were criminals, they would be entitled to a free lawyer. Constitutionally, you get a free lawyer if you're a criminal. So they can say criminal as much as they want. But the moment that actually became true, then they would get free lawyers, which would be a giant expense. They'd actually have to prove things in real court, not immigration court. But as far as like advice to people who are here under questionable status, or it's the same advice I gave at the beginning, Nick. It's get a consultation yearly to see what your options you have, and prepare yourself in place. Your case is going to be different. Your evidence, scan everything, email it to yourself with a good subject line. Know what lawyers actually practice removal defense. Not all of us do. So know which lawyers actually will go to your detention hearings, which one will be in court to represent you. That immigration is their primary practice, not just a side practice. Identify the lawyer you want to work with. And then so that when the worst comes, you have somebody in mind, and a second one in case that lawyer retires, and you have a second backup option.
Even people who are doing it, quote unquote, the right way, going through spousal green card interviews, about to take their citizenship oaths, they have those pulled away, or they're taken into custody at the 11th hour. What do you know about this?
It's happened to clients that I had that went to their typical adjustment of status interview and were picked up and detained. We managed to get them out, but it has turned a simple process into a more difficult process with new burdens. People that are being stopped at their oath ceremonies, or people that are being stopped at the last point with like a family petition, a spouse that petitioned a spouse and they qualify for a green card. What the Trump administration is doing, it's making it more expensive for them to get these documents. They qualify for a green card, they qualify for citizenship, but in the green card aspect, they will have to prove their case in court, which is a huge expense if you have to hire a lawyer to prove your case in court, as opposed to with USCIS. I've had clients that are like 5 minutes away from getting a green card. And because the Trump administration just decided to arrest them, detain them, we have to pay a bond to get them out. And then they have to prove their case to a judge. And so it deters people from doing the process altogether, which I think is the point.
And then now you have the Trump Gold Card where you can just give $1 million, donate to the U.S. Department of Commerce,
Oh
$2
yeah.
million if you're doing it on the behalf of the company, pay another $15,000 processing fee. And that doesn't guarantee you citizenship, but it gives you a better opportunity. I mean, this is just, it's as fucking wild as it seems. I went through their website yesterday. I mean, what do you think about this, the Trump Gold Card?
I mean, it makes me question who are the people that are actually going to pay $1 million to get a green card. However good your vetting is, a criminal that never gets caught never gets put into proceedings in their home country, and we never know about it. It's the limitation of our system. But somebody that can pay $1 million, it means that they are bad financial investors, because there are other pathways to come in. If you have enough money, you create jobs in the United States, you invest your money in the United States, and if it works out, you make a ton of money on the back end. You get your green card and you can recoup your money and then make more money because you made jobs in the United States, you made a successful business in the United States. The people that are going to rely on this $1 million green card are people that don't want to start a business, they don't want to invest, they just want to lose the money to come into the United States. And I don't know why they want to come in that route when there's a very easier route that results in them making money, not losing it.
The irony to me, Pedro, is that these are the Einstein visas and the one that Melania Trump got back in 2001 to come in here. These, exceptional circumstances or national interest waiver, where people who are supposedly going to make our country better and brighter talents for these corporations, that's who the target is. But you go through the Reddit threads and it's like, this is going to be abused by the Russian oligarchs, the Venezuelan moneymakers, the drug lords out there who are going to pay this big, this big sum of money, and meanwhile, you have these farm workers who are really keeping the country running, who should be the ones that we're granting citizenship to. And it's just such a backwards, it's such backwards logic, man. It's all optics for this WWE president that we see, strong and wrong. And he's been able to convince people that the loudest person in the room is the smartest person in the room. And it's just these black and white thinkers, man. What upsets you? What upsets you out there as an attorney? Do you have any hope at this point?
I mean, I have hope that the administration is going to end, and I mean it will. Next election cycle, it'll end. Things will get simpler. I mean, this is my second Trump presidency, and I lived through Biden. I lived through his first one, and I see a simpler time when Biden was president. It's like we were still hostile with ICE OPLA, the attorneys for ICE. We were still fighting our cases out in court, but there was just for compelling cases there was still discretion. For compelling cases, there were ways to work with the system. We were dealing with human beings. Now we're dealing with emails that don't get replied to. We're dealing with judges that are fighting the case on behalf of ICE when ICE doesn't have to do anything. It's just there was a right way to do things that still resulted in deportations. It wasn't perfect, but at the very least, it was fair. Now it feels like it is just not fair.
And the administration is creating more undocumented people every day by canceling things like TPS for Cubans and Venezuelans, by labeling people, these blanket terms, as criminals. We've seen what happened in Trump 1.0, where they made it a felony to cross, and that basically led to sanctioned child abuse with family separation.
I know. I mean, it was a tough time, especially the family separation, the zero tolerance policy that was executed the first administration. I mean, in this case, it's still family separation. There are U.S. citizens that are born here that are being separated. Like, they are here. They're U.S. citizens doing school, college, whatever, and their parents are being forced out. For the next few years, 10 years, 20 years, they're going to be conversing like this on Zoom. This is going to be the reality of talking to their parents. And that is family separation. And it's a very, very sad circumstance that certain people shouldn't have to go through.
It's evident and clear to us. We call it Family Separation 2.0. We've had the Women's Refugee Commission on here talking about pregnant women who have been ripped away from their newborns, have no idea where their children are when they show up at these processing centers in Central America, and talk about what they went through and their experiences. So it's happening. They're going after the heads of households, the day laborers, the landscapers, people that are the breadwinners for their family, to dismantle the family institution. And you know this as a Latino, we love families. We love our families. My mom, she gets under my skin because she's, my biggest confidant, and my biggest supporter. And I want nothing more than to be a family man in my life. It's so important to us. And so they're creating this generation of trauma. They're breaking us down. And it seems so intentional to me, Pedro. It's like cruelty is the point. We say this here all the time. And you're not getting responses from people in these immigration services. Under the law, you're supposed to be afforded these, rights and opportunities, but they're doing it deliberately. It's so evident and clear to us that they're creating this chaotic situation to keep people from coming here, to deter people. I only have a couple minutes left here with you, but I want to ask you about this conversation I had with an ICE agent recently, a just retired one, former federal prosecutor for ICE. And he pushed back at any claims that what they're doing out there is unlawful, even if he admits that it's against policy. When you hear that, as an attorney, what do you think?
Unlawful doesn't mean right. I mean, or lawful doesn't mean right. I mean, there's plenty of laws during in Nazi Germany. I mean, there's plenty of laws during the civil rights movement and segregation laws and what have you. There is a moral code. There is a moral, natural law of keeping families together, of allowing people to seek the best possible opportunities they possibly can, as long as it doesn't affect other people, as long as it's a net benefit to the United States, which countless statistics show that it is. There are natural laws that are in place here, and those laws are the ones that are being violated. Yes, that ICE official might be right that they haven't done anything unlawful, which honestly, if you really look into the court cases, which I do on a daily basis, you'll see that they're not lawful. The appellate courts, district court judges, they've all been throwing these things out.
And they're lying under oath too. The
Exactly.
district judges are the U.S. district court judges are saving America right now.
Yeah. So I would forward them to those cases. Show when you actually have to present evidence, show how lawful their activities are. So even if it's lawful, I say it's violation of natural law. It's violation of human moral code. And even if it is lawful, go to the court cases, read them, read the 31-page opinions, and you'll see where the unlawful actions took place and who actually executed those unlawful actions.
When I think of somebody saying that, I think of this, image that I have in my head of ICE agents showing up at a residence and taking the camera and turning it away. If what they were doing was lawful, they wouldn't care if they were caught on camera. They would want the evidence to protect themselves in a court of law to show that they were moving in good faith. They stand behind these ideas of doxing when we know that the mask dehumanizes the individual and it allows them to rain their brutality on the streets of America, like we've seen, like this video that I showed yesterday on my social media, man, of this woman in Minnesota, a Somali woman who's being dragged on the ground by these agents. And the scenes around Pedro, it's just more chaos. It's not making America safer. None of this is making America safer in my eyes. In the final moments that I have you here, what would you like to talk about? Is there anything that we haven't asked you that you think is important to know, or anything that you'd like to talk about? Now's your chance.
I mean, I would just say, just stay educated on these issues. I mean, it's not going away, and have some empathy. I mean, this entire enforcement measure, everything that's been going down, National Guard troops being deployed, ICE searches all over the United States, they have an impact on the Hispanic community, even if it's not your community. It's my community, it's your community, Nick. But if it's not your community, try to have some empathy with it, because there are hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are slightly less protected now because of Perdomo v. Nome. We have to deal with this with our neighbors, with our family members that are now targets because of their race and skin color. That alone should get the conversation going and getting stopped. That and apart from empathy, support the nonprofits in your area, identify them, try to help, because honestly, legal representation, hiring me is expensive. Hiring another immigration lawyer is expensive. So try to help out the way you can to your community members, to the people around you, even if it's just a Netflix subscription, which I put in a video. Like, do what you can to help the people around you. That's, I think, how I would end things.
Pedro Chavez, how can we follow you? How can we keep up with your work? You're doing such a great job at educating the public. How can people find out more?
So, I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Hello Pedro Chavez in English. And if you want to hear me in Spanish, at Hola Pedro Chavez, also on the same platforms.
Yeah, you're doing it in 2 languages. I had no idea. I've only seen you in English.
No,
You're a blessing.
No, I do. Every single one of my videos, Nick, is in Spanish. Every single one.
No wonder you have 48,000 followers. This is amazing, man. I love it. I love to see people stepping up and meeting the moment. That's exactly why Eric Sandoval, my producer in my ear, myself, that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing. There's talents that we could take other places, but we believe in what we're doing here. We really believe that we're meeting a moment because there's a moment to meet, and you're doing the same thing, Pedro. Pedro Chavez, attorney at law. Hello, Pedro Chavez on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. Appreciate you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Nick.
That was Pedro Chavez. What a great conversation, educating and empowering us. I love what he had to say about that clip that we showed you. We saw that day laborer, construction worker, I should say, on the roof there in Velasco, Texas. And Eric and I saw that clip and we're like, man, this is clearly a strategy here to keep people safe and from being taken into custody. But when Pedro saw it, he said, hey, look, don't say anything. You don't even have to give them your name. If you are on a job site and you see agents coming, suspected federal agents, put down your work tools, don't move, don't give them a reason, don't say anything. Keep your mouth shut. I mean, that's advice that you hear not just from immigration attorneys, but all sorts of criminal defense attorneys out there. Eric, do we have Angel in the waiting room or not? Oh, we do. Oh, great. That's awesome. Our next guest is the vice president of the Indigenous Journalists Association. She was going to be the lead in our show here today, but we got caught up. We're just glad that she joins us here. Let's show a clip first before... Here you are, Angel. Here you are. I was going to say we're going to show a clip from your documentary here. Let's talk to you while you're here, though. How are you? Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, loud and clear. So I first found out about you back in, I guess, last year because you were the star of this documentary called Bad Press, which focuses on the Muskogee Nation. Tell us about the parallels to what you guys went through with a newly elected official there in the Muskogee Nation and what we're seeing now on the streets of America.
I mean, a lot of the things that we saw at Muskogee Creek Nation were echoing national trends where there was, you know, a lot of anti, you know, like news kind of sentiments from our politicians, but not necessarily the public. You know, they didn't always share the same feelings that the elected officials did. And the elected officials were very much expressing their desire to not see such negative news. They didn't like the criticism that the news had for the politicians and elected officials, but the people, the regular everyday folks, they seemed to be quite happy and satisfied with their news. And we experienced the very first repeal of a code that the Muskogee Creek Nation had that designated us as a free and independent press. That legislation was repealed. We came under government censorship. So the government was essentially able to censor and read the news before it was ever published. And we kind of advocated and worked on that. Some of us decided that was not how we wanted to work and you know, went other places, and the newsroom kind of fell apart a little bit, but it was under government control. Some of us stuck it out, and then we made the documentary Bad Press while we were basically trying to shed the light on what we were experiencing in terms of censorship from our tribal government. And in the making of Bad Press, we had, you know, a lot of different periods of the advocacy for the press freedoms in the Muskogee Creek Nation. And then we actually had it in the final hours. One of our legislators brought legislation that allowed the people to vote to amend the Constitution of the Muskogee Creek Nation in order to have First Amendment protections, right to press freedom, right to free speech. They actually even passed the first FOIA law that our tribal government has ever, you know, had on the books in conjunction with this massive amendment to the Constitution that was approved by the citizens with a 76.25 approval, which is more, we needed a super majority in order to pass this amendment, but we actually got a super majority plus 10. And so it was a very good day for our newsroom, for our tribe. And I'm not sure on the data at the time was that there was 5 free presses in Indian country. And we were deemed one of the first one to do it through constitutional by the people referendum. So it was kind of a new breakthrough for tribal, you know, government and advocacy. And
your backs were against the wall. You know, when I first saw the documentary, what stood out to me is this image in the newsroom where you're getting basically clearance from the government to publish what they're going to allow you to publish. We have a clip, a trailer from the documentary, and we want to show you everybody what Bad Press was all about.
Houma was ever even a state. There was a Native American Creek citizen running a daily newspaper.
But here I am reporting on news topics that maybe don't show my tribe in the best light.
Our tribal government
Roll call vote, please.
wasn't prepared for hungry journalists
All right, Jared, what you got?
snooping around and doing the news.
3 top officials were arrested. The word embezzlement comes to mind.
But it's all the Muskogee Creek people have as far as source of news. and someone's got to do it.
Our institutions have been corrupted, especially our media institutions, even if those individuals working in them are not. When you think about and see what's happening across the country at media organizations and also what you guys went through, what do you think, Angel?
I really have spent a lot of my time advocating for journalists and news organizations to turn away from the advertising model, because we know exactly where big money funds are funneling into news organizations, and it's through those advertising models. And I really encourage people to turn back to more of the indigenous values on which this whole profession is founded. And people kind of look at me and go, wait, what do you mean indigenous values? But Native people have been telling their stories for years, and it's kind of how our culture has survived these massive institutions and systems. And so journalism, in my mind, boils down to that exact, same indigenous principle of a service to the community. And I think that more and more we're seeing people leaving these giant conglomerate media companies and really wanting to do more impact and serve the people more. And what I've seen, especially with my own media company that I run now, director at Muskogee Media, is that once you return to those values of community and service and really put your, efforts there, then the bottom line of your business actually falls into place. It's a very service-driven profession, and it's made by and of the people to serve their questions and needs. And so the more we do that, the more we turn away from these corrupt models where the advertising dollar always drives the focus of the news. When we turn away from that model, we actually see a better served community that's more plugged in, that's more engaged, more civically knowledgeable, and they have more of a stake in their own governance. And so that indigenous mindset of serving people and taking care of the community really does align quite literally with journalistic principles, if you ask me.
We say this all the time, that journalists at its best is the ultimate act of service. And when we talked prior to this interview, we talked about returning to those community roots. And I know that I feel community so much more now, and being able to not only just connect with people online, but out in the public. I get noticed more now than I did when I was at my old job, which is like mind blowing to think, because, the big 3 red letters, that's the apex. And you think, that's where I used to think the same thing, that's where all the eyeballs are. And now it's so clear that the anecdote and the remedy to what we're seeing out there in the country, to what we're seeing the Trump administration do, is independent media. One of the things you also brought up, though, is Lucius Tiger, this Trump-like figure, this politician in the Muskogee Creek Nation. He's back. This is so, tell us about that. He comes in, makes a splash, and now he's back again.
Yeah, I think if you watch bad press, the last thing you see is that the folks who were elected officials who opposed press freedom, they all lost their seats. But then in the last election we just had, Lucian Tiger ran again, and it's like the memory of folks is very short because he won his seat. But we also seen some significant shifts in our election landscape too. And one of those was that people ushered in the district voting. We had districts and you had to be registered within the district. Well, then they went to no districts, and now we're back again to in-district voting, and that leaves the door open for an individual to only have to fight in their district, whereas before they had to fight the broader overall opinion, and many of our citizens live off the reservation. And so it's easier for a politician to go out and solicit the votes of the people in his home district than it is, broad and afar. And so we see these different cycles in politics. And that's what we're really experiencing in our nation right now, is a cycle. And every country under the sun that's ever had a press and ever had, elections, they see these cycles of the pendulum will swing one way really hard. You'll see a great shift into conservatism, and then you'll see it swing back again, and it goes back and forth. And the trick is for journalists not to be punted back and forth in the middle of that, right? To continue to keep the blinders on and seek out the truth and facts and give the information to the community that they need so that they can go have the impacts that they want. And so people are always kind of sketchy about talking about politics, but really politics is the science of people and what they form policy of. So it's not unheard of that these different cycles will come and go, and you'll see a vast change or a reshaping of public opinion. But what we have failed to do as journalists is we've failed to make that connection to the audience. And that's how we've gotten caught in the middle in the national narrative, right? We've relied on keeping the advertisers happy. And we know that those advertisers are often in conjunction with vast sums of money, billionaires and tech and things like this. And that affects how our news works for us. So now people are actually out in the world not trusting the news as much as they used to. And that's our job as journalists. And we have many hats. Now, we're not just out there gathering facts. We're also sometimes the only person lending a listening ear and doing a little bit of, therapy and affirming. And then now we also have to do this mending of the relationship with the audience in order to maintain the integrity of our work and our profession that we all love.
We have these short-term memories, and political memories are even shorter term. You may look at Trump coming back. All of these things that happened under his first presidency were forgotten and almost forgiven after the $2,000 stimulus checks. Everyone was just talking about the stimulus checks, and that's all that matters. And it's just like being moved on to one other shiny object after the next.
If you study media and its role in other countries, we've had these same scenarios play out there. Whether it was in Eastern Europe, when Russia was, going through its troubles, and these different things like perestroika, where there's this great push and this great need for people to communicate, and then there's this vast crackdown on the communication. That's basically part of your dictator playbook, and it plays out over and over throughout history and on different continents. And it's even amplified stronger for the indigenous person who's already not a part of the broadest narrative, right? So you have the indigenous person who's over here trying to maintain their local stories. And sometimes we can feel like we're not as affected by the national trends, but they do trickle in. Bad Press was a film that showed how all those national trends filter into the microsphere of a small community and what they do in the long run. And so I'm really grateful that it didn't just live on a hard drive, and it's out in the world more valid than ever, still relevant and still being shown. And we've had the opportunity to work with some of the most legacy newsrooms in the world, really, and in different continents. And when we met first, you were asking the question of how do I solve this issue? And I'm like, indigenize your mind and the way you think about it. And so now I'm excited to see you doing the independent thing. And that's actually what a lot of people are doing. I'm seeing more local nonprofits. In my hometown of Tulsa, a new nonprofit has just started up, and it's a BIPOC-led media. And it's exhilarating to see these different we went through an era where everything was getting dragged into the bigger, big companies were buying up the small ones. Now we're seeing people part back out of that big media culture, and they're going back in their hometowns and they're doing the grassroots thing. And so that's wonderful to have.
How can others indigenize their mind and go back and return to their roots of the community?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How can they? What advice do you have for others that may want to do the same?
So people who want to do the same thing, I have some books that I really love to recommend. Decolonizing Journalism is a great one. There's some indigenous reporting guides on how to do better stories in Indian country. You can check out the Indigenous Journalists Association. They fundraise for independent media initiatives, and they do things like that. You can get involved with them there. Also, one of my favorite things to tell people to do, and everyone could do this, is to get into conversation with their local media. Someone who's local, that's covering their small town, neighborhood, whatever it is, communicate with them and tell them what your questions are. Ask them about their process and understand the real work behind gathering news. All we see is the polished package, right? They see the delivery, but they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm kind of encouraging people to get involved in that more and more. And we're even seeing a lot of instances where citizen journalism really is important right now. There's programs like the Documenters, and they are uncovering, wonderful wealth of information that's benefiting the community. And that's a way that people can plug in, asking questions in their local government, and then being in communication with their local news source and telling them, even if you have criticisms, that's one of the things I tell folks is maybe you're annoyed with that news organization and maybe you want to tell them about that. I know when I was a journalist, I would get stopped in the grocery store. You were never off the clock, and I would hear the feedback of the audience. And it's important that the journalists, we understand that when we're in dialogue, even if it's hard to hear, it's good. That means things can still be changed. We can still work on it. People are communicating because they still have a belief in what you're doing. It's when it goes silent that you're in big trouble. And that's when you have really huge problems. And I don't know if those are as easy to overcome, because so far we've always had that dialogue. Even if it was rabble, and not pleased, people told us what they thought. And so we have to take that to heart and remain in dialogue.
With all the relevance that you see from what you guys have gone through and these political memories, people coming and going, what do you see happening next for this great experiment, this city on a hill that we call America?
Oh man, it's something. I mean, I'm of the generation, I'm like, what more can we live through, But, I kind of see, it reminds me of Idiocracy. Have you ever saw the film? And
I saw it again this week because I'm reminded.
Maybe there's going to be a McDonald's brand on the White House. I don't know, but I feel like that's the place that we're moving towards in terms of policy, which is really sad that so many corporations can affect policy. But like I said, again, that's cyclic, right? Since time immemorial, there's been corporations trying to get their way in the White House, and their laws passed that benefit them. And then you see the people push back. And I think that we're heading towards either a full-on branding and corporatizing of the American politics, or we're going to see the people come back and take back the power and realize that they have that ability. So,
Angel, I would be remiss to not ask you this while you're here. Just everything that we've seen go on in the country with immigration forces going across the nation. The case of Elaine Miles, the Northern Exposure actress who produced her tribal ID and it wasn't accepted. Leticia Jacobo in Iowa, the Arizona resident who was taken into custody and nearly deported. We have at least more than a dozen cases. I mean, I really haven't seen much coverage on how Indigenous members are being targeted, but you're there on the ground. You're a member of this community and also the vice president of IJA. What are you hearing from your membership about how Trump's deportation forces have had an impact on Indigenous Americans?
Well, I mean, it has had an impact, and Indian country is talking about it. In fact, one of the things that we heard from our members was that they were nervous about coming to conference and gathering in large places, in a place in large numbers, because Indigenous folks tend to be targeted as well by various, different law enforcement, and they were just a little concerned for their safety. We, the Indigenous Journalists Association, has put efforts into educating the journalists on what they do and do not need as far as, documentation. I know that as a person who is Indigenous, who does carry a tribal ID, I produce that every time I try to go onto a plane, just to see what the consensus is, if they even know what a tribal ID is. And our tribe puts out real IDs too, like they're actual and, meet the standards for real ID. Will TSA allow that? 9 times out of 10, they give you gruff about it. And so, as just Indigenous folks, we're encouraged to try using our tribal IDs to normalize that in airports, in various situations. But it can be really frustrating because this atmosphere that we're in is just not one of safety. And, you run into that worry of, am I going to have to deal with it? And then we even see some crazy headlines over the last few days where apparently one of the tribes is making deals for ICE detention centers, and I've seen that in news headlines. So Indian country is not just like all on the same page when it comes to ICE and it comes to law enforcement. There's always been a lot of back and forth discussion about jurisdiction and things like that, and who has the right to police where. So that's something that is a very intense topic, and it's been very difficult to keep the resources coming in and stay on top of, because we're all like volunteering our time as board members, and we're coming up with trainings and keeping our journalists as safe as we can. And so these kinds of topics are important. They've come into the landscape so quickly. I mean, Oklahoma has 39 tribes, but we have ICE on the ground, and I'm hearing stories where, people are disappearing basically. And so keeping up with that coverage is very, very difficult. I don't do a lot of coverage in my current role, but I do a lot of work that supports keeping those journalists covering these topics. And I can tell you that knowing what to do and having those resources, your last guest was just giving out great pointers, and that kind of information is invaluable for journalists, because it has to get into the community some way so that people know how to stay safe and what their rights really are. I mean,
the fact is, people are less safe right now because of Perdomo v. Nome and these Kavanaugh stops of being racially profiled. Anyone with any pigmentation in their skin is at risk of being stopped. Plain and simple.
It's like, how do they distinguish between like you or a Muskogee person? They really can't. It's all just like this visual thing. And then you have Muskogee people like me who are, light skinned or blue eyed, and it's just a varied thing. And our phenotypes play very little role in our actual political relationship with the government. And that's what being a Native American is in the United States. It's a political relationship with policy and documentation. And so it's very difficult out there in the world, and we're doing our very best just to keep everyone as informed and safe as possible. Thank goodness for our very, generous grantors who keep, us funded and keep us doing this great work, because without these independent sources of information, I mean, a lot of people are left out there with nothing else. It's not like major networks are covering what's happening in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, or, things like that. That's something that's not even on their register, really. We're not a major market, draw for everyone. So the information needs to flow in. And so it's often these small, independent, tribally owned or not tribally owned, but these guys are the heart and soul of their community. And we're doing our very best to keep up with the information as it changes. So.
Angel Ellis, we're so grateful for your time that you joined us, Vice President of Indigenous Journalists Association, also Director of Muskogee Media. How can people keep up with your brilliant work?
So right now I'm really just kind of doing a lot of spreadsheets and paperwork, but I'm on Instagram and kind of Facebook, sort of, but mostly I'm willing to like email anyone if you'd like to reach out, you'd have questions. Muskogee Media's webpage has my contact information. And then if people are interested in doing community screenings of bad press, we have some impact information. You can get in contact with our impact managers. We're still trying to keep that out in the world. It was not one of those fancy ones that got a big old streaming deal or anything, but we're very fortunate and blessed that people in different communities still are reaching out, and we're showing it at different colleges. And then our grantors have given us a little funding to show it in Indigenous communities as well. So very blessed in that way. So,
well, we're blessed to have your time and have you on the show here. Angel Ellis, thank you so much for connecting and for all the just encouragement that you gave me and the leads to hopefully keep us up and running. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Keep doing it. Like, hey, go out there in the world and do your own thing. I'm so proud of you guys and the work you're doing. Thank you.
God bless you. Angel Ellis, thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. That was Angel Ellis, Vice President, Indigenous Journalists Association. I can call her a friend now. She's awesome. Affirmations, we have had so many affirmations to stay in this role. It's a hard role. It's one that has been 6 months now in the making. It was 6 months, 4 days ago on December 12th. And we've done enough of these episodes now where we've gotten in a little bit of a rhythm and know that this is where we belong, but that doesn't mean it's not difficult or challenging. We still belong here, though. We still believe in this, and nothing that's hard or nothing that's worth it is easy, that they say out there, man. We had a great show today. Pedro Chavez gave a lot of insight as to what you can do to protect yourself in case of feds show up to come and harass you and give you a hard time. We also had Angel Ellis giving us the parallels between what the Muskogee Creek Nation has gone through with their Trump-esque like political figure who tried to strip away press freedoms there, tried to, and did for a short time, was the editor and approver of all publications that were going out. Everything was state run. And she talked about the parallels to what she sees and also the persecution that Indigenous Americans are facing in this country because of what we call Kavanaugh Stops, the racial profiling of anyone with a little bit of pigment in their skin, anyone who is shows any fear, anyone who shows any sort of probable cause, which is this broad sweeping definition that the feds have now to be able to take you into custody. And we're seeing Americans wrapped up in that as well. You know that if you've been watching us, we've been reporting on that, and we're going to continue to keep reporting on this issue. We have so much more ahead and so many more stories that we're working on right now. But for today, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys taking the time, hanging out with the elf on the shelf. I thought that was pretty cute, seeing that in the background all day. Thank you guys for making us help make us truth. Jeez, what am I trying to say? Thank you guys for helping us make truth go viral. There you go. I got it out. And as always, have a great day on purpose.